Good morning, everyone. My name is Shelby Thomas, founder and CEO of the Ocean Rescue Alliance International. We're a marine conservation nonprofit focused on building marine infrastructure to support coastal protection, habitat, scaling restoration, and also connecting communities together through art. And really stepping into this conversation with each of you, I would love to have a quick introduction. Debbie, Dr. Thomas, starting with you, and if we could go through each of your perspective works, so we'll come back to our first question.
Thank you for convening this, Shelby. So hi, I'm Debbie Thomas. I'm the Dean of the College of Marine Sciences and Maritime Studies at Texas A&M University. I'm a marine scientist by training. My disciplinary specialty is paleoceanography, which the iPhone autocorrects to pale oceanographer. Neither of those, but I currently lead the mission in education and research and development and innovation in all dimensions of coastal, marine, and maritime. And so thrilled to be here this morning with all of you.
Joel Johnson, I just talked at you for 25 minutes, but President and CEO of the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation. Before that, I was at the E.O. Wilson Biodiversity Foundation for a few years, and as Dane mentioned, I've had a prior career in corporate advertising and marketing, the foundation is based in Washington, D.C. There's about 100 of us who work across the 18 National Marine Sanctuaries as the official charitable partner of NOAA.
Hello, I'm Vicki Ferrini. I am a senior research scientist at the Lamont-Doherty Earth Observatory, which is at Columbia University. We're celebrating our 75th year this year, so it's a pretty exciting time to look back at the accomplishments of Lamont and think about the future. My work for the last 20 years has been wrangling data that's been acquired primarily by the US academic community, focused on the seafloor and the subsea floor, curating that data and all the legacy data that was acquired prior to that, especially by our institution, which is very unique data, and making that available to the world for scientists and for the public. And I also lead one of the regional centers for the Nippon Foundation JEBCO Seabed 2030 project, which is focused on creating a complete map of the global ocean by 2030. We are currently, as of last year, at only 26% of the ocean mapped. So there's a huge part of our planet that remains completely unvisualized and unknown, and we're trying to help address that for the world.
Thank you guys so much, and really excited to dive into each of your perspective, expertise, and really sharing this value of nature and the ocean, of this planet, that ocean allows us to live on this planet. So it's incredibly important, and Joel, incredible kickoff, and what you're really ending with is opportunity. And I think what's really beautiful about this day and age is we're at the most technologically advanced state that we've been in humanity. We're taking samples from Mars, as Dane just mentioned. We're just making so many new discoveries with technology and advancements, gene editing with CRISPR. There's no reason why we can't be making regenerative solutions that support the environment and people. And so we really do have such an opportunity now to come back to nature. And we're talking about ecosystem services. And what I'd love to define is, what is ecosystem services relative to each of your perspective careers and to the ocean. Really, a lot of us focus around coastal protection, biodiversity, nutrients and cycling, and blue carbon. So there's a lot of different factors and elements of what these natural systems provide to us as people. But in reality, really, nature is the ultimate currency of life. And we need it. It's pivotal for us to take care of it. It nurtures us, and through us serving nature, it also serves ourselves. So I would love to hear how each of you would define ecosystem services relative to your work. Dr. Thomas, let's kick it off with you.
Well, and I'm coming entirely from the perspective of higher education and thinking about how it is our role and responsibility as educators and at Tier 1 research universities to embed in our curricula and in our professional development and in the training of the next generation of workforce leaders the incredible importance of ecosystems and services. And I love the way you frame this in terms of nature as the currency of life. But we have a colossal responsibility and opportunity to ensure that every student passing through our doors is equipped with the awareness and the ability to have a positive impact on this. And we can take it a step further and think about the role and responsibility of higher education in terms of K through 12 informal education and our impact and ability to shape continuing education and impact working professionals and lifelong learners. And then, of course, there's also the dimension of research, discovery, and innovation that's achieved at research universities, and that's they're individuals and groups and departments that have a direct impact on enhancing our understanding of and ability to sustainably and holistically sustainably improve the partnership of humans with the environment that they inhabit.
Most certainly, and Joel, you really highlighted a lot of aspects of that interconnectivity and really supportive community and community support in these efforts with the National Marine Sanctuary and seeing all of the other nonprofits work together, going down that road in Florida. What would you really define, especially having the National Marine Sanctuary, as those vital ecosystem services?
Sure. Well, let me give it an example, too, that also sort of centers the qualities of the ocean enterprise. Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary off the Central California coast is a sanctuary in a bay. And I think 50 miles offshore, there is a very, very steep drop-off, a really deep canyon, and you get this upwelling of water as the current passes, and it's bringing vital nutrients from the bottom of the ocean into the bay. It's called, from an ecosystem services, we call it provisioning, which is that the ocean is bringing a resource through its natural cycle into another part of the ocean. And when it gets there, you get these incredible kelp forests that emerge. You get these dense concentrations of anchovies and fish, which in the early history of the California coast was a vital fishery. And then it was overfished, right, now, as we do. And that element of the provisioning broke down. And if there wasn't anchovies, then you didn't have whales, humpbacks, and Pacific right whales, right? That's right. And gray whales. And then you didn't have otters. So the sanctuary, created some 30 years ago, helped to remove certain obstacles in the way of, in terms of development, that would have interrupted that provisioning cycle. And so you saw a resurgence in the bay of kelp and anchovies and whales. And what's really powerful is now if you go around from Santa Cruz to Monterey, there's like over 50 technology companies, nonprofits now doing cutting-edge scientific research that informs marine science, pharmaceutical development, you name it, global impacts off of protecting this one area. And then, of course, you get world-class diving and tourism. It's revitalized the entire community of Santa Cruz and Monterey. And that's why I think of ecosystem services in that way,
Yeah, there's just such different frameworks of really looking at all of these values, also from a community perspective of well-being. Right, we're inherently connected to the ocean. We're 75% water and salt water too, and so is our planet. And there's such a wellness perspective that goes into supporting communities and livelihoods, and not just the food that we eat and the protection that we have, but looking at all of these interconnected dynamics. And I think what's really incredible about your work, Dr. Vicki, is just there's so much we don't know about the ocean, and that goal to map the seabed is just so exciting, and it has that opportunity, and also being able to discover other elements that we're unaware of. And so I'd love to hear your perspective of even some of perhaps undervalued or unrealized ecosystem services that might arise through some of your work.
Yeah, so I spend a lot of time, probably my whole career, really thinking about how we can better address the sparsity of data in the ocean. And when you really get down to it, it's not just that the data are sparse, but we need it at different resolutions, different scales of repeat observation. So it's a really complex data problem. So I think, the most fundamental thing is that it's really hard to value what we can't visualize, what we can't see. We don't know what's there yet. So Seabed 2030 really presents the opportunity to provide a baseline so that we have at least a first order understanding of the shape of the global ocean floor, which of course has impacts on a variety of things. But I think what's most compelling for me as a scientist and as an individual is the opportunity that this project and really all of the ocean enterprise presents for connectedness, right? Breaking down silos and stovepipes, uniting data across these barriers, and ultimately what Joel was saying also really resonated, people, right? Ultimately, this is all about, at least from my perspective, people, how we can benefit people, how we can create more jobs, how we can better manage the resources that are there. And we can't do that well if we don't have data as a foundation. So really just capitalizing on the ideas of how we bring that data together is what's most compelling to me, I guess.
Absolutely, and really being able to assess that with intention and focus, right? And where can we be making a lot of progress with having that information and access to that information. And I think that's a good thing to tie back in Debbie, leading some of the future generations that are getting to explore these data sets and come in with that curiosity and opportunity to explore and connect. What would you say from an institutional perspective, how we can lead future generations into bringing in really an economic-based value and being able to scale work that supports restoration and community?
Yeah, and so I just want to go back to Vicki for a second. It's impossible to put too fine a point on how important your work is, because without data, without access to data, the research stops. And researchers and groups from around the world depend on these repositories and are contributing to these repositories. And so, a huge, again, it comes back to education about the awareness that, sure, there's an investment required to generate this data, to collect this data, and to curate and steward this data in perpetuity. But the return on that investment is unquantifiable. And so this is something that gets me out of bed every morning, keeps me awake at night too. How do we continue to educate our friends and families and stakeholders about the importance of this data, even if they can't immediately feel its impact? But I promise everything we're doing in this realm, we in our spheres, absolutely has a positive impact on lives and livelihoods.
Absolutely. And I think in terms of value, right, we don't even understand what's there. We really haven't been able to put a full valuation. We're starting to get different models, especially in the blue carbon space and looking at seagrass and frameworks of doing mangrove restoration. That's one of the more built out one, at least for our ocean space. But there's so many more elements. And truly, how do we value a resource that's instrumental to supporting life? Like we really can't. And it's so difficult to make some of these ties, but relative to community and a societal framework and mindset, I think we are moving to a collective shift of this interdependency realization, right? We've kind of, it's like children, right? We break things first, and then you can come back and build it together, and hopefully we're at the end of our breakage here. But we really do have such an incredible opportunity now to come back together with everything that we have and be very focused and intentional to build things together from different perspectives and having that access to data information and now being able to tie in different values and ways to actually assess these values, right? So people can actually relate to them on how it impacts them. I think that relatability and bringing it back, how does it impact people's lives daily? And how healing it is to actually be also nurturing nature and what that gives to us. And it's incredibly hard to especially put some of these values on, oceans out of sight, out of mind for many people. And so making it relatable is really tough. That's something we really, throughout my whole scientific career, I could talk till I'm blue in the face about how the ocean will save humanity. and also all of the biomedical cures that also lie within secondary metabolites and things that we don't know about in the ocean that has vast potential, not just in medicine, but biomimicry. What can we learn about technology? I mean, I'm a coral girl, but if we want to learn about outer space, coral reefs are the initial astronomers of the sea. They use the sun, the moon, and the stars to settle and colonize in one place for their whole life. What can we learn from that? We still don't understand all of the mechanisms. What can we learn from a deep sea organism that can actually move hundreds of meters? That pressure differential is insane. And a lot of our technologies are modeled after nature. So we can be using it as an inspiration. Actually, a fighter jet's modeled after the wingspan of a hawk. And a lot of different modalities, we need to look into the ocean. So we literally have our answers right at our feet, and we need to protect it. And we're seeing vast ecosystem collapse. But I think what's beautiful is we are at this convergence. And each of your different expertise and sectors and being able to elevate and come together and figure out how can we relate this to more of humanity, to care, and how can we elevate building these solutions. And from the marine sanctuaries perspective, Joel, I'd love to hear from an economic value perspective, how have you guys really looked at different models that have supported the framework of scaling that protection and valuation for an MPA?
That's a great question. Well, let me answer it in two parts. The first thing I'm going to say is that I don't believe there is a more democratic process that I've ever encountered in public lands management and natural resource management than national marine sanctuaries. Sanctuaries are nominated by the communities that they support. And then that nomination process goes through evaluations, naturally through NOAA and different state evaluations, environmental assessments, which are really critical to understanding the value of these incredible places. And then it goes into a kind of hopper, and depending on the needs or interests of the administration, you get a sanctuary being designated. Last administration, we designated 3 new sanctuaries. The previous administration, the Trump administration, designated a sanctuary in the Great Lakes. And so, in fact, every president in the last 20 years has designated sanctuaries.
So cool.
And that's because they understand and they get what you're talking about, which is it helps make the invisible visible. And this is something I think Chris had talked about too. The out of sight, out of mind nature of the ocean becomes visible when it's relevant to the community. And as I said earlier during the keynote, these sites are economic engines, but it's a sometimes thing. They're not always evenly economic engines. Thunder Bay is a great story, Florida Keys is a great story, but there are smaller sanctuaries that are not quite doing the same job because, like any good business venture, you want diversity, right? You want some different types of modalities and different types of ecosystems being protected. What I think is a challenge for the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation and everyone working in this space is how to look at building greater marine domain awareness without sacrificing our oceans and our Great Lakes. We have learned a lot during the industrialization of this country about how to do it right. We just have dozens and dozens of great examples of how to do it right. We simply cannot just turn our backs on high quality regulation, policy, frameworks, environmental assessments, data collection, so that we don't make mistakes as we go into this new biosphere, and we become an oceanic species. Because that's what's going to happen. In the next 10 years, we're going to start talking about living habitat that we will be in under the oceans. That's coming. That's coming. It's the pathway to get to Mars or into space. So we're going to start in the oceans. But I don't want to see a high-rise tenement in the ocean. I don't think you guys want to see that either. So we have to live with that environment using the engines of economic growth, technological innovation, data collection, thinking about how do we sustain that system when we go into it. And that's the job of making it relevant to all Americans. Now, some days I just get to do it by saying, hey, we just discovered a new cool shipwreck, and that's exciting, and for a young person, putting a piece of coral in their hands, or standing at the edge of Monterey Bay Aquarium and looking out and seeing otters on their back rolling with the little pups. There's all these different ways to connect. For some people, it's the Slocum glider, right? So I think what the Ocean Enterprise does, and I encourage all of the technology companies here to do this, is to put a face on your technology, put a face on your innovation, make it meaningful, And I agree with you, Debbie, that it's just, your work is so critical in terms of mapping the ocean. We all, there's a large set of market forces that want to monetize the ocean. Well, would you buy a piece of property that you don't have a map for? That's ridiculous. Would you speculate billions of dollars of your economy on deep sea mining and the damn ocean is only 20% mapped? That is ridiculous, right? Like, we got to grow up. These are exciting opportunities, but if you FAFO with the ocean, you will lose the opportunity. So as technology companies, what Debbie said, we've got to be responsible as investors, the investors in the room, you need to be asking these tough questions. How is your technology going to do its job and protect the resource that I'm investing in? And it starts with knowing where the heck you're going.
Newest member of the Vicki Ferrini fan club here.
We need you. We need all of you. And I think that's the aspect of, aside from the opportunity, we have an incredible responsibility. And really, responsibility is the ability to respond rather than react. And we tend to be a reactive species. And in the ocean, it's a little more drastic. If you do something, now we're playing management. You look at lionfish in Florida, many other examples. But we have so much to learn, but we also have so much that we have learned from our mistakes and can now catalyze into action and to making very intentional decisions that can pave the way for the future. And mapping is critical, right? It's the first seeking knowledge to understand what's there and what we have to protect. And that's still, one is the issue with connection and connecting people to a resource, but also we're looking at the rapid need to scale. We've gotten great on land planting thousands of trees with technology and becoming very efficient with ways to scale restoration. It's much harder in the marine environment, and creating different innovative solutions to scale restoration efficiency is critical. And a lot of our work comes from a context of building infrastructure that can help scale that, where even 10-year-olds can be involved with restoration. Some of the work that we work with reef cells is a threaded frag plug, so you can screw in a coral like a bolt. And how can we turn models to even using tourism to help support restoration? Not only is it helping get corals out and the quantity out, but one of the most important aspects of that is connection. If we give people the opportunity to participate, not only does it help support getting it out there in finance, but it creates an opportunity for them to connect with that resource. If they went and outplant a coral or a seagrass or a mangrove, they are going to think about that coral in 5 years, and they're going to go back to their home and maybe relate to their environment a little bit different. And so I think enabling ways that more people can get hands-on, not just aware, is critical in building a model that supports regenerative restoration. But we're still needing to meet some of the technological scalabilities. And I think, obviously, we're going to kick it back to you, Vicki. Where do you see some of the gaps within technology for mapping the seafloor? And this immense responsibility that we have to protect and take care of it, especially when there's conversations about further exploration and exploitation. We need to first understand. And so can you share a little bit about some of those gaps that exist and what's really critical right now in helping meet that scalability to explore it?
Yeah, so in the context of Seabed 2030, really to get to scale and try to achieve our goal at a faster rate depends on broadening engagement. That includes helping to empower people in all corners of the world who are in this space and are under-resourced or don't have the infrastructure or don't have the skills yet. To really be able to disseminate tools and skills and knowledge is a way to disseminate power and grow momentum. That's one. The technology is certainly accelerating. It's still very costly to acquire this kind of data. It's costly to transform it into the usable products and formats that we need. So there's space and opportunity for technology to help in all these different steps along the way. But it all has to be done with intention. And I was saying earlier in conversations this morning, really figuring out where the human effort goes most efficiently in this continuum of moving the data from acquisition all the way to product, and also making sure that the products that we're building are both future-proof, so that in 10, 20 years, the data archives are still delivering value, and also that the products that we make today are meeting the needs of the stakeholders and the people that need the data to drive decisions.
Absolutely, and I think efficiency is key, right? We don't have much time. Oh, we're gonna wrap
Why
this
don't we
up.
open it up to the audience and get some questions going and make it a conversation?
I imagined you
Absolutely.
with a big hook.
Yeah, I know. I was blocking you out
You
over here,
guys,
Dave.
you guys are doing great. So any questions? Because we're really getting some Millie.
Okay, I have a big mouth. I don't think I need a microphone. So I talk to a lot of students, early career people, mid-career people, and I start to talk to them about these topics. And they say, oh, I'm not an oceanographer. I didn't go to a marine science curriculum. Or I talk to very smart people at even some of your universities, and they say, not yours, but they say, we don't have a marine science program. So talk about all the skills you need. You need communications people. Joel, that's why you got invited. Such a great
Thank you.
This guy majored in theater, and look what he's doing today. How do we attract all of these people into this network and mobilize them to help with what you're doing? And what are all the skills? It's not just marine science, right? What are all the skills you need?
Yeah, most definitely.
Great question.
Well, critical thinking, the ability to make connections among different, often disparate ideas, that's a muscle that can be trained. The ability to think interdisciplinarily, I think it's our responsibility to teach entrepreneurship, or the ability to be entrepreneurial, because change is the new norm, and our graduates and our current staff and faculty have to have the ability to adapt and get out in front of change. So these are the things that higher education can offer in a systematic and programmatic way. And my passion is finding ways to harness someone's passion of the coastal, marine, and maritime spheres and equip them with these tools so that they can get out and save us.
So let me have a question. What we've been talking about, particularly the marine sanctuaries, is so interesting. I come from the Monterey area, so I know what that's like there. But the nearshore things, it's not that they're obvious, but they're very valuable. But it's the deep stuff that we have to go to and have to find. And people have less, they can't imagine it. It's hard to, whatever that is out there. How do we get deeper with that?
So I think that this is a place where data can actually be the connector, right? I often think in my mind about data as literally the thread that could weave us together and connect different industries, different expertise. Having different perspectives as we address the data certainly helps us utilize it in novel ways. But we can and we do have technology now that allows people from their phone to watch real-time operations on the seafloor that are being conducted with remote-operated vehicles hanging off a ship many, many, many days away from the coast. You can engage in these processes of exploration and discovery in real time. You don't actually have to be on the ship. So the technology is getting us to the place where we can expand participation And we need to do more storytelling, more intentional work to get more people involved and to raise the profile of why it's important so that we do get broader participation and support across all levels of society. This is how we can reach students and people in the middle of the country, far, far away from the coast. It shouldn't have to be dependent just on the populations that are, within driving distance of the ocean to steward the ocean and care about it.
And
How about you guys? Oh, we have a question out here.
So I haven't heard any of you guys talk about modeling yet. You've talked a lot about data. Oh, thank you. You've talked a lot about data, but really, if we're going to make the most out of our data, we need an interdisciplinary approach to put those data together and create models so that we can get a lot more information. And I feel like there's a big disconnect between the ecological forecasters and those taking the observations. How do you foresee overcoming that boundary?
Everybody looks at me.
Well, no, I think a really brilliant thing,
Great
pointing
question.
back to what Millie said, we all need support, and no matter what you do, we need engineers, people from business to all come in to serve nature, not just the ocean, but whatever your gift is and talent is, you can use it for good, and you can use it to help catalyze making an impact in this space. And we need everyone. And so coming in with new engineers that have a different framework and mindset and being able to look at that data and efficiency. I recently met, his name's Ralph, and he's doing different economic valuations, and he worked with the state and federal government more on valuating ecosystem services, but he had an experience with a whale, and he looked at data about carbon sequestration and wanted to put a value on a blue whale, and completely shifted his career to now doing valuation of nature-based systems and services. And so having that kind of background and coming from different perspectives like Joel, we need people. So we need support, and we encourage people to come explore the data sets and build models. But Debbie, add to that.
And our next panel after the break is going to be on MRV, which is measurement, reporting, and verification, which is really what you just said, getting it out and then being able to model that. Am I right?
Yes, and
Debbie?
bringing all tools to bear is absolutely part of the solution. So I absolutely appreciate you mentioning modeling specifically, but AI and training the large language models to simulate, to create more data through simulation so that the models can train themselves.
Yeah, and we have a number of really very interesting AI tasks going on throughout sanctuaries with different partners. I'll just put a plug in here for a particular technology I'm very excited about that where modeling could play a very critical role, and that is also in terms of helping make the invisible visible, and that's eDNA in the oceans.
Yes.
If we have, with eDNA sampling, which is very affordable, low cost, I loved how you put it in terms of being able to distribute this so that there's power in local communities to be able to contribute this critical data, and you can do it through sampling through eDNA, and that's just the modeling can be done in different ways, so you can set up an agent to focus on how to identify whale migratory patterns to reduce ship strikes. And I've met a lot of people, for example, in the marine industry, and I've never met a captain who said, I want to hit a whale. It doesn't exist. They want as much data as they can possibly get right now. So for you technology companies, I hope you just took that as an idea and you can wrap me up in that. But basically, what we want to do is make sure that the data is usable by some kind of stakeholder. And eDNA is exciting because you can detect within those small samples all kinds of valuable information about what's going on, what species were present or just present based on the analysis of the material, and then make critical decisions. And how exciting would it be to be able to say, listen, we went from closing a conservation zone management area closing to protect a whale from, say, 30 days to 15 days because we have a more accurate forecast of the presence of that species. I know Maersk would be interested in that information, right? And the local ports as well. And then if you're a whale watcher. You know, there's a local business, and you know it's a family business and run by generations, and you want to make sure when you go out on the water, the whales are present. That'd be great data to have. So right now, I will say I'm personally worried about the loss of data, and these databases. Like I said, they're hard to get to, but there's a lot of databases that exist out there. The federal government has many of them, and I hope that we're thinking about redundancy models in order to protect that data.
You guys are fantastic. This was great. Shelby, thank you. Debbie, Joel, Vicki, it's a great thing, and we're learning so much. It's really great getting everybody involved. So let's take a break. Be back in 15 minutes, and we'll keep going. Thank you.